So, dear Chairman Wu, dear hosts from Commonwealth, dear distinguished speakers and guests, good morning, 早安. I will do my speech in English, so that was the only few words you will be hearing in Mandarin from me today. Actually, this week is my 1-year anniversary of arriving in Taiwan. So, thank you. I'm actually very pleased that I can celebrate it here with all of you, talking about a topic which is extremely close to my heart. So over the next 20 minutes, I'll talk to you a little bit about AstraZeneca and about why we believe I&D is very strategic to us. First and foremost, for those of you that don't know yet, I mean, this is what we are all about. This is AstraZeneca. So we are obviously a pharmaceutical company. We are a global pharmaceutical company. And we are very much a patient-focused pharmaceutical company. We are passionate about science, and we truly believe that science can help us to push the boundaries of what is possible, to reinvent and to change the course of disease, and hopefully one day to cure diseases. We have a quite comprehensive portfolio, so we have a number of therapy areas that we operate in. And we have diseases and products that actually treat very primary care diseases like diabetes, but we also treat very specialized diseases like oncology and even rare diseases. And last but not least, I think I've heard from a lot of my fellow speakers the importance of impact, the importance of purpose. And this is no different than AstraZeneca. What we believe is that our mission is, of course, business growth and helping patients, but it is also to understand the impact on society and the limitations of our planet and how can we contribute to a sustainable planet for the future. This is in a nutshell our purpose. So this is why myself and my 500 plus colleagues in Taiwan and our 80,000 colleagues across the world, why we come today every day. Our purpose is to push the boundaries of science to deliver life-changing medicines. And obviously, I think science is evolving. A couple of years back, medicines were limited to treating disease, to managing the symptoms. But we are coming into an era where we are trying to slow down disease progression and hopefully one day to cure some of the main drivers of complications and some of the main killers that are happening, disease killers, drivers, in our societies. We have been in Taiwan for a very long time, not under AstraZeneca, but actually our first presence here dates back from 1945 under ICI, when we were working together with the government to basically eradicate malaria. And so over the last 75 years, we have had a growing contribution. We are currently the leading pharmaceutical company when it comes into investment into local biomedical research. We have more than 100 clinical trials currently running in Taiwan, from phase 1, so early stage, to phase 3 clinical research. We are the 4th largest pharmaceutical company, but maybe more importantly, we serve approximately 1.5 million patients in Taiwan. That is about 7 to 8% of the population is taking some of our medicines. And we are obviously a large employer because we have, not as large I think as some of my colleagues here, but we have 500 plus employees. And that's of course why we believe it's extremely important that we, through developing a great place to work and through I&D, that we get the most out of those 500 employees, but that we make sure that they enjoy when their alarm clock goes off in the morning and that they want to come to AstraZeneca and to help more patients in the future. So why do we believe inclusion and diversity is important in AstraZeneca? In AstraZeneca, we have a strategy, 3 strategic pillars. One is science and innovation. One is growth and leadership, which are very, let's say, science and you know, ultimately priorities which are very linked to our industry. But our 3rd pillar is actually people and sustainability. And it is our mission every day as the leaders of the organization that we are working in to make sure that we develop a great place to work. Because we believe that when you develop a great place to work and you connect that with a diverse set of talents, you can truly make amazing results happen. And so this is our mission. And so some of you will have noticed that I'm not talking about D&I, but I'm actually talking about I&D. And that is actually purposefully done in AstraZeneca. So we believe that inclusion comes first. First, you need to create an environment, a culture of inclusion. You need to create an environment where people feel that they belong to. Then you can attract a diverse group of talents, a rich group of set of expertises and experiences to make, ultimately, innovation happen. And so within our I&D strategy, we have 3 priority areas. I talked a little bit about inclusion. So inclusion for us is all about fostering an environment where people feel that they belong to, that it is in some way safe, psychological safe, risk-free to operate in and to be yourself in. We want to create an environment, a work environment, where ultimately we can have equitable environment for all of our employees, no matter what is the background, no matter what is your gender, race, sexual preference, and so forth. And last but not least, we really believe in making a true impact. And with that impact, we believe that we cannot do this alone. And I think I heard again from some of my colleagues the importance of partnerships. And so coming to a forum like this one is extremely important to us because we like to talk to organizations or people that share our values and to see how can we work together with those organizations to push forward. Within our industry, of course, societal impact is partnerships to drive health equity. And I think one example that a lot of you will be aware is the work that AstraZeneca did during the pandemic with our vaccine. You see, when many other companies were thinking first and foremost about business, about shareholders, about making money, we thought we are a pharmaceutical company, we are a science-driven company, we have great partnerships, like the partnership with Oxford. And we need to harness that power, those partnerships, first and foremost, to help the world get out of the pandemic. And that is why, actually, over the last 3 years, many of my colleagues have worked really hard to deliver more than 3 billion doses of vaccine, most of those at a non-for-profit, and most of those to low and middle-income countries. And this was what was truly needed to come out of the pandemic, not a nationalistic approach, but a global approach. So within our inclusion and diversity, as I said it already, ultimately we are forming that great place to work. Within that great place to work, we are trying to make sure that we have an inclusive setup and that we make sure that all of our talents from very diverse backgrounds can work together to drive our bold ambition and our strategy. Now let me zoom in a little bit in terms of I&D in Taiwan specifically with some of the examples of what we are working on. And obviously I only have 20 minutes, so I cannot go into all of the examples, but I'll try to share a little bit of what we think are the most creative ones, the newest ones, the more innovative ones. First and foremost, obviously we track our scoring twice annually from our employees. So we have something that is called the Pulse survey. So it's an employee survey global, and then we get those results. And very much, I think, like what my colleague from TSMC was talking about. We analyze those results, and one of the KPIs, let's call it one of the outcomes that we're tracking, is around how people feel with regards to AstraZeneca. How are we doing in creating this inclusive workspace? How are we making sure that diverse people can feel at home in AstraZeneca and can contribute, co-create? And so in Taiwan, we actually have an extremely high score. So 91% of our employees actually agree with the organization and their managers specifically creating that inclusive workspace. And so how we're doing that, and here is a few examples on the slide, and I'll talk about some of those in more detail. Maybe to talk about, first of all, we already have, as you will see a little bit later in my slide, quite a very good gender diversity in AstraZeneca. So that's why we are actually also focusing on what we call other dimensions of diversity. And so through these initiatives, we're actually trying to address a lot of different elements under the I&D pillar. So Leadership Connect, I think, is one thing that we just launched this year. The idea of Leadership Connect is that actually the tone from the top can be very much around, we live I&D, this is how we want to obviously operate. But what we realize is that all the people managers in our organization are the ones that will on a day-to-day basis interact with our employees, and they will be the ones that have the greatest impact on I&D. So Leadership Connect is actually a series of trainings, role plays that we do with our people, all of our people managers in AstraZeneca Taiwan, and where we ultimately teach them, help them understand that all of us have some sort of unconscious biases. And we need to be aware of those blind spots of those unconscious biases. We need to teach them to actually practice what we call conscious inclusion. How do you make sure you take the time to ask your employees, your teams, to contribute, ask for their opinions, and also how to create a psychological safe work environment. We also have Project Idea, which is another sense of diversity that we're working on. We realized that in Taiwan, in many cases, we are actually hiring from top-tier universities only. And so through Project Idea, we have done an outreach program to a broader set of universities in Taiwan, let them participate in sort of business challenges, co-creation opportunities, and mentor them while they're still in university to then help them to bridge to employment and to make sure that they can get ultimately hired within industry, not only our industry, but all industries, especially in major companies. And then the third one is about 180 reverse mentoring. And obviously everybody knows mentoring. But what we've tried to do is we've tried to turn upside down the mentoring concept. So normally mentoring is the more senior or experienced person is mentoring the junior person. But actually what we've realized is, especially with the generational gap that we need to bridge, is that young people have a lot of innovative ideas, a lot of what they can contribute. And so this mentoring is the other way around. It's actually our young, more junior colleagues are mentoring the more senior colleagues about topics which the more senior colleagues are maybe not experts in. Talking about digital, talking about creative ideas, talking about how to do more outreach within the communities that we operate in. For the fourth one, I want to share this slide because actually ERGs, employee resource groups, which are voluntary-based resource groups for people for similar backgrounds and communities to come together, share experiences, but also make sure we educate the rest of our organization. And so one of the very important ERGs for us is AZ Pride. It's obviously related to LGBTQIA+. We were actually the first affiliate in Asia to establish the AZ Pride ERG in Taiwan. And as myself, the I&D sponsor for Asia area, last year we expanded to 2 other additional countries within Asia. But AZ Pride is extremely important for us. As you can see, we've done great activities last year. Myself, I did 3 days of cycling in the rain for the rainbow ride. It was a real rainbow ride with all the rain that we got in October. But it was really fantastic because it was not only about the ability to show our commitment, but it was actually great that during the breaks, right? I mean, in the evenings, for example, we all stayed in Yilan and then in Fulong. And so we got an opportunity to actually engage with NGOs. And they were talking about some of the challenges and realities that they are facing, even in terms of some of the legislations that they're trying to influence, some of the policies they are trying to shape. And it was just such an important and informative way to listen and to learn and to think about how multinational companies like AstraZeneca can also contribute. So I talked a little bit about our gender diversity, and so you can see it here. This is actually the the numbers for senior middle management roles. So it's middle management and above, where you can see Taiwan, we're already at 49% gender diversity. But actually, if I look at all 500+ employees in Taiwan, we have 59% of a female ultimately or women representation in the company. And so at the same time, as I talked about from our Pulse survey, we usually try to understand not only, of course, in terms of inclusion and diversity, but also in terms of how people feel that they speak their mind. How are they being listened to? How can they co-create and contribute to the organization? Because by making sure that we can activate the minds of all of our colleagues, we can make sure that we have the most creative ideas that ultimately flow through. And so in both of these ultimately measures, you can see on the one hand, of course, very strong numbers for Taiwan, but even slightly ahead of our global average in itself, right? So I think Taiwan is ultimately a great place for I&D in itself. And so we've been recognized externally for our progress in I&D. I mean, at the top you can see ultimately some of the global recognitions that we've received. Some of them, like the Financial Times Diversity Leaders List, we were actually 18th out of 15,000 companies that have been interviewed. And so this is around diversity, but many different dimensions. It's about gender, race, preferences, and so forth. But then also when you look at the Human Rights Campaign Index, where we got actually the maximum score of 100, was related more to really zooming in on LGBT inclusivity into the workplace, and so we're very well placed with our AZ Pride across the world for that. And then also the FTSE Women Leaders, we were one of the top 20 companies, recognizing ultimately how many leaders we have at board level, set level, and all the levels below that as well in the company. And so also in Taiwan, we've been lucky to be recognized for all the work that we do with regards to Great Place to Work, inclusion and diversity, and of course our talent development agenda. Ultimately, I&D is a carrier, is something that can help us to achieve our mission, right? And here are a few examples of how we are trying to not only use I&D internally, but also how we're trying to use the I&D mindset in terms of how we position ourselves as a company towards the external world. And so the first one is around innovation. And innovation beyond inventing new medicines is around, for example, how do you partner with startups to apply some new technologies that can be used in the disease areas that we are passionate about and that we are experienced in, to make sure that we, for example, diagnose patients earlier, or to make sure that we can, for example, apply some of the innovation to improve our ability to ultimately invent new medicines, for example, in target drug selection. So we are using a very open partnership approach, inclusive approach, through our 20 health innovation hubs across the world to establish new and exciting partnerships, to listen and learn from experts and innovators in the field, and always think, how can we bridge them back to our industry, to our health challenges that we're trying to solve? And so one of those 20 hubs is actually in Taiwan. More and more, we also work with patient groups. And I think that's extremely important in our industry. We need to listen to our customers, which are, of course, doctors, but our end customer is actually the patient. So we need to make sure that we have a very equitable and inclusive approach towards patients themselves. And so, for example, again, within research and development, we have done this extremely well to make sure that from the early, let's say, the early definition and the early invention of a product, when we're trying to address a disease, we actually make sure that we listen to the patient voice, understand the disease as a broader sort of ecosystem, and how ultimately that can help us not only in inventing a medication, but also in setting up the supportive diagnostics that are required, or some of the supportive projects and initiatives that can help patients maintain and treat not only the disease with the medication, but also with the solutions that can go around that. And then last but not least is around technology. And technology is extremely important for us. When it comes to healthcare, there is great opportunities in leveraging new technologies like devices, connected devices, ultimately AI and other type of new technologies, machine learning, because these can truly help us to take an ecosystem approach when we address a disease, not only to look at it from a one-sided way, and to ultimately provide end-to-end ecosystem solutions. And so these are some of the outcomes of what we've been able to drive with our health innovation hubs here in Taiwan. It's been a great story of multiple years of hard work already. We have mentored over 35 startups in Taiwan and helped even 15 of them to ultimately expand their solutions in creating partnerships beyond Taiwan, ultimately becoming more active on the global space. And the solutions that we've been able to co-create and sometimes help to ultimately advocate for more than 40 of them have been adopted in healthcare organizations across the country. So when you ultimately go in a hospital, some of those solutions that are being used, some of them in the background you might not even be aware of, but might have originated from these type of partnerships. And so this is actually my last slide, and I think this is quite important because building an inclusive and diverse culture will never end. But it is extremely important for us. We believe that if we can have the right work environment, if we can keep on attracting a rich and diverse talent group, it will continue to establish our success for the future, and that ultimately will help us to accomplish our mission of pushing the boundaries of science, delivering life-changing medicines, and helping more patients across the world. Thank you for your attention.